Hey everyone, so in this video I'm going to talk about separate hand sets and their relation to both hand sets in my logical methodology. Maybe some thoughts about separate hand practice overall. And I think I'll start with a funny little observation I've made about teaching my logical methodology recently, but for some time now as well. A lot of this I cover in other videos I've uploaded recently as well. I think in some ways the logical methodology is like a compendium of all these different strategies layered on top of each other, and then now they're all interrelated with each other in a very particular way. It's essentially like a complete system of logical problem solving, as I may have mentioned before. There's no one aspect that's extremely difficult for an adult student to intellectually understand, and for teenagers and for a fair amount of children as well too. Maybe the younger children, it's harder. You have to do some more of the thinking for them. But as they get older, then they start to be able to think for themselves more as well. But primarily, I'm referring to adults. Like, it's not too hard to understand the adding and reverse principle. It's not too hard to understand the moving on and then coming back later, right? The spaced repetition, or to always have one overlapping note. Like, as you may know, I refer to them as sets in my methodology. So for instance, a one measure set is one measure plus the first beat of measure two, or a two measure set is two measures plus the first beat of the third measure. Not so hard to understand these, but actually doing them, actually executing all these concepts together, it is difficult. And the funny thing I found is that, I guess as with other things as well, there are some adults, some students that there are certain concepts they grasp immediately, and there's other ones that it's very difficult for them to even wrap their minds around. And then for somebody else, of course, it happens to be the total opposite. They seem to struggle with the thing that the first student found easy, and vice versa. And that's, of course, typical for a lot of things, but it's because the practicing I'm teaching is so based on strategy, so based on mindset and everything, that these considerations are particularly important here. And also using them together. Like, sometimes somebody understands one concept, such as adding in reverse, and they also understand the other concept, which is practicing small sets, moving on, and then coming back, increasing to larger sets. Once you combine these principles together, though, there are some students that understand how to do that pretty quickly with just a little teeny bit of explanation. And there are others who, through no fault of their own, have a lot of trouble reconciling these two concepts. And it's surprising sometimes. You would not expect that certain students would get hung up on this or that element of the strategy or combination of different strategies, but it happens. So that's kind of the limitation of some of these videos. No matter how detailed I try to go, there's still going to be times when individual feedback specific to that particular student's piece, that particular student's situation, their personality, their mindset, their tendencies, that I won't be able to cover in the video. You will think, oh, I totally understand what he's saying. And then somebody else, they probably won't be able to get it without that specific feedback. And so that's what ongoing lessons are for, honestly, that level of specificity. But I'll do the best I can to get to a certain level of detail that I think is still beyond pretty much any other YouTube video that you might find out there in terms of very specific problem solving, to the extent that these YouTube videos allow, right, without going into hyper-specific situations. So just thought that I'd say that. And even going through that whole monologue right there, I think that that kind of shows the type of thinking that I'm doing as I'm trying to solve each student's particular problems and get the strategies across in a meaningful way. Anyway, so I mentioned about sets earlier. A lot of the time, separate hand sets are easier to start with for many students, all but the most advanced or more advanced students, I would say. And what I should say at this point is that when I say like solving a set, that means playing it correctly, technically once and one time only, to the specifications that you set for yourself. Usually for me, it would mean pretty much with the metronome from the beginning, from memory from the beginning, and using my logical methodology from the beginning. Ideally also with complete conscious awareness, like using mental practice. When I solve a given set, it's that not only I can play it physically, but I have full conscious awareness of what I am playing while playing it, and that I can also mentally play it, like I can imagine in my mind's eye how to play it. And if that seems a bit esoteric or difficult to understand, I do have that video about mental practice, and I'll probably talk about it more in the future as well too. So, but all that seems very complicated and of course impossible to completely objectively assess. So, so suffice to say, if it's pretty good by your standards or very good by your standards, then we would mark that as passed. But the way to solve the given set is a distinct factor. So for instance, if I'm trying to solve a both hand two measure set, like let's say it's again two measures plus the following beat there, I can break that down separate hands. I can break it down through adding in reverse. I can, break it horizontally, vertically, in any way that I like. But the idea is that I play this entire section, right? First, let's say it's first beat of measure 1 to first beat of measure 3, correctly once to my specifications. Once I do that, then I can move on to other sets and other problem solving. So what I'm trying to get across is that I can do all of these other, it's not that I merely just play, both hands from the beginning of the measure over and over again. I'm going to add in reverse, I'm going to practice separate hands as well, most likely, but the result is me solving that given set. So, so even as I'm talking now, I realize that I guess half or more of this video is already kind of explaining the some of the philosophy and strategy behind the method. So I guess now this part of the video will be more specifically about separate hand sets. So I'd say I'll just show you on the screen here. So here we have, if I can turn this. This is actually my own copy of Bach Invention number 13 in A minor, and I've just saved it onto my iPad. My pencil was being a little bit wonky today, so hopefully it'll hold up as I try to draw shapes and so on. But if not, it's okay. It'll just be a little bit less pretty. So I would say here, this piece is very involved. For all but the advanced or intermediate, upper intermediate students, it's probably going to be helpful to break this separate hands when initially starting. And separate hand sets I mark like this. Let's see if we can get this eraser dosed off. With just regular brackets, square brackets. Maybe I'll put SH for separate hands. And for both hand sets, I actually mark, doesn't have to be with different colors, but I just feel like it in the moment. Let's say like a BH. So for instance, if I were to solve or play correctly, from here to over here, it's not turning into the star for some reason. I would mark like a 1 here, right? This would indicate a both hands set. That means I played both hands correctly from star to star. And then if I wanted to do separate hands, let's say I wanted to play just right hand correctly from here to here. So then I would mark this 1 in the square brackets. That means I played right hand correctly from this point to this point over here. And then if I wanted to play left hand correctly, I would play from here to here. Okay, so that's all that means. Same thing for if I wanted to play from here to over there. Right hand alone, here, all the way through this measure and including this point right here. That would be this indication. If I wanted to play left hand from this point to over there, I would mark a 1 over here. So I think for the sake of the length of this video, I guess probably I'll think of the title, I guess, in a little bit, and it's only going to be like intro to separate hands practice. But what I would say is it's definitely helpful to just start with separate hand sets first in many situations. So this would mean you would look at this piece, and depending on your level, you would either conclude, okay, I can easily do both hand sets. Like I can do from here to here, both hands, or even from, let's say, here to here, both hands. Like, now the stars are working, okay. I can even do from here to here, both hands in short order. Like, can you easily do either from here to here, or maybe from here to here, a 1 measure or half measure set? Can you easily do that within, let's say, I don't know, 5-6 minutes as the upper limit, and then maybe like 1 or 2 minutes as like the lower limit? Can you solve those sets pretty quickly? You can break it down, you can do separate, you can do adding in reverse, all those different strategies, but you can get that result fairly quickly. If so, then it would be appropriate for you to start both hand sets first, because you can do that quite quickly. But if you're thinking to yourself, no, it's going to take me like 45 minutes or longer, 30 minutes, whatever it is, to even do from red star to red star, then you should start with separate hand sets first. And what this will look like is you just doing right hand alone, but in particular sections. It's not just general separate hands practice, as some teachers might ask you to do. And you have to ask yourself, what's easy for me to do? Is it half measure sets, for instance? So this means right hand alone from red star to red star, right? And then if you achieve this, then you would mark over here, half. Okay, that means you've played half a measure plus the following beat. And then here to over there, let's see if this works. Yes, it did. Okay, so here to here, if you achieve this, right hand alone, right? These 5 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then you would mark a half here, and so on. So if you were successful, you would try to keep solving these half measure sets. You might need a teacher's help to identify where the first and third beats are in each measure, or you might know how to do it yourself. But assuming that you know how to do that, right, the beginning and the halfway point of each measure, you would just solve, so to speak, each of those right-hand sets one by one. And after a little bit of time, you'd probably go back and start solving the left-hand sets. You would do like from here to here, left hand, here to here, left hand, etc. So ideally, you would end up with right-hand half-measure sets solved through a whole bunch of sections, then the left-hand half-measure sets solved through a whole bunch of these different measures, and actually just move on from those. That's what I would ask a lot of students to do in the third lesson, in the first lesson rather, most likely, assuming that they already knew how to play. This is the piece they brought, and I determined that they could solve half-measure separate hand sets. I would think to myself, okay, we've concluded that this person is able to play half-measure separate hand sets on their own, and hopefully I've concluded that they can do it independently because of the independent practice in my in the format that I teach in. And so then I would say just go home and just do a lot of this, right? Just continue solving half-measure separate hand sets. There's no evidence they can do things that are more advanced than this. Like there's no evidence that the student can do both hand half-measure sets. There's no evidence that the student can do one measure separate hand sets. So I would just have them do this, do them correctly once, and then just move on from them. And usually people will protest like, well, but, how will I link them together then? Or if I just do them once, aren't I going to forget them? As we know, forgetting is desirable, right? From one of my earlier videos, maybe about 2 months ago that I've uploaded. And we won't worry about that for now. So I think I can't promise it'll be next week. Maybe it'll be next week. Maybe it'll be another time soon. But I will kind of continue the explanation of how these separate hand sets will relate to the both hand ones. So yeah, if you found this valuable, please like and subscribe, and looking forward to continuing this discussion on separate hand sets another time soon. Okay, see you next week.